What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all of that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. This is the time and the place where you can get answers to your most pressing Amazon advertising questions. Just a quick recap for those of you who may not have attended before. Hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm the co-founder of an Amazon ads agency called Junglr, hence the name Ask Junglr. And we have been running advertising for brands for over 6 years now, going on 7. And we really focus on business-centric ad strategies. What the heck does that mean? Well, what we have found over the years is that there is best practices in running advertising, obviously, but there is also other circumstances, like is the brand dealing with excess inventory, and so we need to game plan there. Or with tariffs, margins were very tight, right? So that ad strategy is a little bit different than somebody who is like, hey, we are really just going after growth this year, or we have another brand that there's new competitors in the space and CPCs are going up, and that is, getting driven. And also for context, we work with beginner brands as well, but we also have cut our teeth and been working with brands that have very large catalogs as well. Very large, I'm talking like 50,000 SKUs and more, right? So how do you get incremental strategy? I mean, like every single product essentially should in some ways have its own ad strategy because it has different conversion rates, different click-through rates, different profit margins. But how does one manage that kind of complexity at a scale of 50,000 SKUs, right? Insane. I will say that because we have gone through literal blood, sweat, and tears to find those answers, I am able to come here every single Thursday to share my knowledge, our knowledge. I have an amazing team behind me now. It is no longer just me coming up with the answers. I have an entire ecosystem around me, some amazing contacts. And so that's really what this show is all about. Me being able to bring these answers to you to help you level up your Amazon ad game as it gets more competitive, as margins get squeezed from all ends and the market really matures and there's 27 million different updates, everything from AMC, some people still not running DSP. You would be surprised at how many brands I am in contact with where they're not even leveraging sponsored brand ads at all. Like there are so many different ways that you can go building out an ad strategy. And so with that, I will, I'm going to open it up. We already see some questions in the chat. So the format of this is you can drop any and every Amazon ad question you have into the chat on whatever platform you are listening in on. And I'm going to pull those up and we will get right into it. Seeing some people saying, Elizabeth, good to see you. Good to see you as well. I appreciate you tuning in. It's saying happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. This is one of my favorite segments of the week because I get to geek out on Amazon ads, which is, I'm going to say my first love. Family is a first love, but Amazon ads is definitely a close second. All right. So our first question is, when I set up an auto campaign in the grocery category, groceries, that is actually a little tricky category, actually. Certain target types, close match solution substitutes, and conflicts sometimes show no suggested bids or data. Hold on, let me find the second part of the question. Data not available. Can you explain why this occurs? What strategies you recommend navigate such limitations in automated targeting? Yes. So honestly, not having a suggested bid is not the end of the world. Suggested bids simply give you a good idea and a potential benchmark of what the market requires. No suggested bids happen for a couple reasons. One, it could be that the algorithm doesn't fully understand your product yet. I have seen that on products that are not well indexed or they're not really in a specific subcategory or a good category yet. Sometimes there won't be any suggested bids. However, another one which is more common is like, let's say that you have a keyword with really low volume. Now, this is a little bit unusual because you're talking about an auto campaign, and auto campaigns, because they can target, multiple different searches, they tend to have the ability to get more data on them. But a lot of times it's that most likely the subcategory that you're in, it could be in some grocery categories, because either due to the lower price point, maybe they have slimmer margins. Sometimes they're just like not running advertising in those categories. And that's actually kind of normal. So bottom line, I would say I actually wouldn't worry about it. I would simply start. Now, if you haven't run any advertising at all for this product, then you can just start somewhere, honestly. So there's two ways to go about starting bids. One of them is to start low, see what those clicks are, and then optimize from there if the CPCs are just too high. There's a second way, which is to start low and to work your way up. So where should you start? Well, if you're starting at the top end of the category, just recognize that, you will pay more, although you typically get the data a little bit faster. If we are wanting to, say, be more profitable in how we enter into a space, I would set a low bid. Now, low is highly dependent on the category. Like for a supplement brand, low is probably $1. For other brands, or for typical categories, I would say low, you're probably looking at like 25 cents or something. And then what I would probably do is just start at 25 cents, see if I can get any traction from that. And then I would check the account daily and increase the bids by 3 cents if you are not seeing any impressions, and then simply go about increasing bids that way. So that's kind of why it happens, and it's fine. Suggested bids, you can work without them, and some people don't even use them, which is fine. One of my clients is launching a product that sells well, yet the related keywords have low search volume, only a few hundred. Despite that, their PPC bids are quite high. Hold on. Despite that, the PPC bids. I'd like to understand how we can determine if the traffic is coming from external sources or other factors. Why might PPC bids be so high on low volume keywords? Typically, what we have found, bids are high because that is what your competitors are bidding for those. Most likely what is happening, if you said there is very few related keywords to that specific product, that's why, is because even though there's not that much volume, there's limited ways that you can target those specific shoppers. And so when that happens, you will see CPCs go very high. And so your CPCs would not be, or bids or suggested bids, those wouldn't be driven up if there's external traffic. That's not a factor. Now, if say some of your competitors are selling a lot, then maybe they have external. One way you can kind of infer this, not really, really well, but sometimes what you could do is do a reverse ASIN search on a product. Oftentimes, if they have very high volumes in branded searches, example is, I was auditing a brand. We didn't end up working with them because for us it wasn't going to be a good fit. We try to make sure that any brand that works with us is, it's a good fit and they're going to get an ROI for what we charge. But they were going through in a category and they're like, look, there's a lot of low volume sellers, but there's this one seller that's like, selling, I forget how many, thousands of units a month, and they're doing really, really well in terms of sales in this particular category. And then when looking at that particular product, just doing a quick reverse ASIN search, there's many tools out there that offer that, it became very obvious that the bulk of the traffic that was happening for that product was, where they were ranked high on and where the search volume was, it was all branded terms. So they had really good brand recognition outside of the Amazon platform. And so it was pretty obvious. It's like, well, okay, could you do that same thing? No, not simply with Amazon traffic. So I'm not sure if that was your question on how do you know if traffic is coming from external sources. But yeah, external sources wouldn't be driving up CPCs. Hey, Elizabeth. Hello. Welcome. I appreciate the question. Do you recommend pausing ads that are targeting ASIN that get hits with frequently returned badge, or cohort just throw them, or our cohort just throws them out when we get returns? We have just one child ASIN of the 11 under the same parent where the badge might fall off in 2 weeks. That's a great question. Two things that I would look for to determine if I would pause this or not. Now, the context here is that there's other child. It sounds like this is a parent-child variation. Most likely the answer is yes. I would simply want to make sure that the other variations are advertised. And if, say this is the blue one and people like the blue one, they will go on to purchase that color if it's available. The two factors that I would look at is, one, what is the effect to the conversion rate? So I would look at that. If you are selling through Seller Central and not Vendor Central, there is a fantastic report inside of the business reports. If you go into business reports, detail page, sales and traffic by child item, underneath the column that says I believe it's ASIN, there's like the ASIN is a blue link. So I would look for that specific child ASIN. I would pop that open and I would look at the unit session percentage, which is the total average conversion rate for that product. And I would look at that over time. Now, your performance, ACoS, is going to be, and total ACoS to a certain degree, is going to be tied to how well that product converts. So if that product's conversion rate has gone down, it's going to require a lot more clicks to be able to create an order. And because it costs you more spend to make the same amount of sales, again, because you have to pay for more clicks to get those sales, if the frequently returned badge is negatively affecting the product. Now, the assumption is that it is, and most likely it is, you should see that impact in the unit session percentage, and the ACoS of the product. You can also go in, this is another fantastic tool. If you go into the ad console and you go into the products tab, search for that specific ASIN. Again, there's a blue wording, I think it says trends. You can actually click on that, and what it will do is will pop out your advertising trends for that specific child ASIN. Do keep in mind that this excludes, it doesn't include sponsored brand ads. So if you're running a lot of sponsored brand ads, that data point won't be included. But if you're running majority of sponsored product ads, you should have pretty accurate data to say, again, is the ACoS trending up over time? Am I getting worse performance because of this badge? So that's the first thing I would check. If all of those things are fine, and let's say that this is your best-selling one of your variations, and I said, okay, so this is my best-selling variation. This is where all the traffic is coming. I have great click-through rates in search. And so by me eliminating this child ASIN from, sort of like as a traffic funnel or hook to get somebody into my listing, I'm actually eliminating my best performer. And when I looked at the impact on my conversion rate and I looked at the impact on my ACoS, it's not too bad, actually. For some reason, the market doesn't care about the frequently returned badge. In that case, I would probably leave it active. So that's the first thing I would look at. The second thing I would look at is you actually want to make sure that you're factoring in profits into, what variations you keep active. So a classic example of this is we're working with a clothing brand, and returns in clothing are always astronomically high. And there were some products, believe it or not, that had gotten up to like a 30% return rate. Now, the thing with return rates is you will not see, again, unless it, it has the badging, which again can affect conversions. If you don't have that badging, sometimes conversion rate can be fine. And actually, what we were seeing, several of the products that had high return rates, the total ACoS was great. So if we just looked at that product, I would say, okay, well, total ACoS is fantastic. ACoS is fantastic. Let's sell more of these things, right? Because this is crushing it. But then when we looked at the return rates for that specific item, it became very apparent, no, we don't actually want to push in and accelerate sales in this product because we have such high return rates that it's actually hurting margins. So that would be the other factor I would look at. I mean, you said the badge should fall off in 2 weeks. So my guess is that it sounds like you've kind of fixed that that return rate issue. So if return rates are not affecting your the overall profitability on that product, I would say you're probably good to keep it running. So again, those are the two things that I would check. All right, next question. If some of our campaigns, especially ASIN targeting, we've placed high bids, the competitor's product is selling well and very similar to ours, yet we're getting either no impressions or very low impressions. What might cause this? How may we troubleshoot, improve impressions, share of such situations? Typically speaking, and I don't know what high bids is, so I don't have that context. But sometimes there's suggested bids, and oftentimes if you really want to increase impressions, you may have to have bids that are much higher than the suggested bids. To be honest, it's pretty normal. And sometimes to really get good placements or get a lot of impressions, you need to have bids higher than what you think is reasonable. So that's what I would actually check, is I would increase bids and see if that generates more impressions. All right, a long one. I'll probably read it and then pop down so I can actually see the screen. But some people say if a keyword performs well in auto abroad campaigns, we should move it into an exact campaign, but keep it running in the autos as well. Others say if a keyword performs well in auto, we should negate it in the auto campaigns, increase the bid in the exact campaigns. Which option is correct? Also, if the same keywords are performing in all three campaign types, auto, abroad, and exact, the system supporting them profitably, should we let them continue running? That is a fantastic question, and it gets into this idea. If you look it up, it's called search term isolation. This is actually a strategy. If you've been in a space a while, you would know that this strategy really gained traction when I was first starting out, which is probably 6 years ago. So this strategy has been in the space for a very long time. And it was actually a strategy that was carried over originally from people in the beginning who were starting to run Amazon advertising, and they were bringing over their knowledge from Google Ads. My understanding, now I am not any sort of expert at Google Ads, but from my understanding, their search term isolation, although that has changed, I think, with a lot of the new targeting and things that have come out, that was a very core strategy. No, is it a core strategy now? Things change in 6 years, right? But that's sort of the idea where this strategy originated, was the negating and the original. And to be honest, when I started out, I sort of subscribed to this strategy until I actually really started digging into the data. So I'll give you my recommendations on which strategy I have seen perform best, and then I will also give you sort of my origins of why I hold to the strategy that I do, and it is based on observed data and observed behaviors in the account. So long story short, no, I would not negate if you decide to launch something in an exact match or a phrase match campaign. We have been running this strategy for 5 years, I believe. There are still some people who really, really subscribe to a search term isolation strategy and feel like that's the best way forward. I vehemently disagree. And so my recommendation is going to be to launch it in the exact match campaign and keep it in the original auto or broad match campaign. Now, there's some people who are worried about what's called like search term like overlap or duplication. We have seen keyword duplication not work in accounts, but the keyword duplication that we haven't seen work is when, let's say, you have 2 exact match campaigns that you're trying to bid very aggressively on for the same term. We have seen sort of impressions will like shift to one campaign, and then all of a sudden these impressions decrease, and then they shift over to this campaign, and you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with bid adjustments. But why that becomes a problem is because you have 2 campaigns that have basically the same match types, and you have the same level of aggressive bids in those campaigns. And that's really where we've seen things not work well. But if managed correctly, I've never seen it hurt an account. I've only seen it help with lowering CPCs if you keep it in the original broad and phrase match. So then that becomes a question: how do you sort of, kind of manage these things? And what I would say is that really, to make sure that you're not hurting yourself, is if you manage with a fundamental belief that is still something that is baked into my core, and I've seen it destroy more brands than I care to think of if it is not paid attention to, and that is trying to scale what is often called like discovery campaigns, auto campaigns, broad match campaigns, to some degree phrase match campaigns, category campaigns, 100%, expanded ASIN targeting, related keyword targeting, and to some degree like trying to think of all the targeting type. And those are the primary sponsor product targeting. There is there's another one. It doesn't matter. What we would highly recommend is to be very, very, very careful with how high you allow bids to scale on all of those more broader targeting discovery campaigns. I have seen that come back to bite an account more than once. And the most common way that this happens is in Q4, those campaigns often absolutely freaking crush it. And so, because obviously you're trying to push volumes, you will scale the bids. Come Q1, those search terms that were everywhere do not perform as well. And then you're basically trying to claw back an account that has been sort of really, I don't say mismanaged, but it's gotten out of whack. So our preferred structure and the structure that we have battle tested, seen accounts that are not using this structure, and just try to really fix and do a bunch of reallocation, and it can be really difficult to get to a place where your account is running in this structure. But if you have exact match ranking campaigns that you are really pushing on to drive that rank, and then you also have quite a few and a lot auto campaigns, broad match campaigns, category targeting is a hit or miss, we found. Some more specific aggressive ASIN targeting, exact match ASIN targeting, not expanded ASIN targeting. And then, you can run expanded ASIN targeting. Related keywords actually work. Those related keyword targetings actually can work pretty well in some accounts. Again, it's kind of a hit or miss. But you have those two things, but you keep the auto campaigns and those broader targeting under control by being very careful with how much you increase bids for those type of campaigns, but then two, how high a bid you allow those campaigns to go. And so that's why if we again launch something in exact match and we're going much more targeted, you will have higher ACoS on those on your ranking campaigns. You just will, because you have to keep the CPCs higher on those campaigns. But the goal is, again, to have lower targets on your more discovery campaigns. You could do this by two ways. It depends on what system you had for bid optimization. For context, we have our own internal algorithm, and we have built our own internal software and tools that we use to manage this. So I can speak like what we do. The capabilities that you have will depend on which software platform or how you're managing bids. But the two ways that you can do this is, one, you can just set lower ACoS targets on the autos. So an example would be, let's say I have an account where my ACoS target is 35%. I may target a 30%, and sometimes, like, let's say I run the allocation for my auto campaigns, and I notice, like, oh, holy crap, my auto campaigns are already running at 25% ACoS, like super efficient. I probably would keep my ACoS target at 25%. Maybe I scale it up to like 27, but I'm going to keep it well below my target. So that right there will automatically cap how high those get scaled. But the second way to do this, again, it depends on your capabilities and your tool stack. You can also set what we call like bid caps. So that's essentially, hey, I'm not going to allow my bids to be increased beyond X. X is always relative to the account. On some of our kind of clothing counts, quote low bid maybe 35, 45 cents ish, give or take, maybe 50 if you're going to go crazy. And then like our supplement accounts or beauty's cutthroat, some of those CPCs are freaking crazy. Like my quote low bid might be like 75 cents is probably like a freakishly low bid. In supplements, you might even be getting up to like $1. So again, it's relative to the account, but those are the two ways that I would you can sort of cap and meter those, and then you can have much higher thresholds, targets for your exact match ranking campaigns. And that's a way that we've found that it is pretty flexible. Again, we have our own internal tool stack. Another one is branded targeting. We are very careful with how aggressively we allow branded targeting to be scaled. We have much lower target thresholds for our branded, because I don't ever want to lose money on us having to target our own, be a branded ASIN, so brand offensive campaigns, or our own branded keyword terms. So those are other things that we keep sort of those caps on. Again, caps in how high we allow it to scale the budget, but that another budget, excuse me, how a bid cap, how high are we enabling the system to do that. All right. This is going back to the question on high return rate. Cool. It's the second bestseller, but the converge. Yeah. So Conversion rate was crushed with that badge. Yeah, if it's a second bestseller, I mean, you could focus on the first bestseller for now. And again, the products tab inside of the ad console, especially if you're looking at a single child ASIN, is really great. And you can actually pop down and see like all the campaigns that this product is active in. You can always pause it in the ones that it is underperforming on. The return rate is 4%, but they want 3.7%. Honestly, 4% return rate is relative to the market. Like I said, a 4% return rate would be phenomenal in clothing. Like I've seen 12% is probably a decent return rate in clothing. But if you're talking like large consumer electronics, that one you wouldn't want a high return rate. Consumable products, you would expect to see a much lower return rate. So again, it's relative to the category that you're selling in. All right. I hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you for asking. My question is actually related to the product targeting in Amazon PPC. When we target a competitor's ASIN and Amazon shows our ad on top of search and rest of search, which keywords does it show on? Because top of search and rest of search impressions do not appear on the competitor's product detail pages. So where Amazon show and which keywords? Yes. This has been a question for a while. And then what we realized is that if you look at the search terms that are pulled through a specific sponsored product targeting campaign now, you will actually see ASINs pop up. And that was always our theory, that it was targeting specific keywords. And now the keywords that it targets are related to the indexation of the product that you are targeting. That's how Amazon kind of looks at it, or it looks at keywords that it deems is relevant to that specific product that you're targeting, and you can actually show up on those particular search pages. And those keyword targets, or sorry, not keyword targets, search terms started popping up in search term reports last year at some point. It might have been Q1 of last year. My timeline's like time freaking flies, and there's 27 million different updates. So I couldn't tell you the exact date, but we that was an observed phenomenon across the Amazon advertising community. And we're like, oh, hey, these search terms are popping up. So they started actually showing us. This is actually something that is not uncommon for the Amazon advertising platform, is that there will be certain functions of advertising that either Amazon will announce or we will infer that are happening. However, they don't actually give us the data points to look or to have visibility or any control over that happening. Case in point, Amazon, you know how you have the business placements now, and you can see business placements, and now they give you the ability to only target business placements inside of sponsored product ads. Sponsored product ads always showed up in business placements. That was always a place where it showed, but we didn't have any way to control it. We didn't have any way to even know what the performance was on those things. What's another one? Oh, off-platform traffic. So there was an announcement from Amazon, and they're like, hey, by the way, your ads are going to show up off of the Amazon sponsored product ads are going to show up off Amazon platform, and you have no data to know what the performance is. And there you go. Everybody went, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Thanks, Amazon. This was like 2 years ago, I believe. And then they finally gave us the ability to look at the data of those placements. So if you go and look at a sponsored products placement report, that's where it showed up. And they actually, we just of course like run across these data points. Amazon doesn't give us any insights as to where, like, hey, by the way, you can go find it here. So we've finally got the ability to see like what the placements are, and now there's a checkbox inside of your campaigns to uncheck, hey, okay, Amazon, you can say, hey, Amazon, I don't want you to show me off platform, or if you wanted to, you could specifically target off-platform placements now. So that's sort of the migration of this, is like there's targeting and there's placements and there's functions of advertising that are happening, and then we eventually get the visibility into, oh, okay, so that's how the performance is and that's how it works. So when we got placements and then we noticed that, like, oh wait, there's top of search or rest of search, this is weird. So the idea was like, oh, we're probably showing up on searches, but we don't have the ability to do that or to see that. And then now we have the ability through search term reports to see like where those things are happening. And then on top of that, now Amazon changed their negative targeting inside of specifically sponsored product ads. So it used to be only in auto campaigns, you could negate product pages, you could negate ASINs and brands, and you could negate search terms. But inside of, say, a sponsored products keyword campaign, you could only negate search terms, you couldn't negate ASINs. And then inside of a sponsored product targeting campaign, you could only negate product targeting. So again, visibility now, but no control. Excuse me. And now they again, I don't remember timeline. I swear it was like Q4 of last year at some point. They rolled out the ability to negate both ASINs and keyword searches across all ad types in sponsored product ads. So now we have ultimate control of like eliminating those. So that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully that gave you some clarity on, kind of what the nuances are, how those things happen, as well as what you can do to affect, performance as well. Hey Elizabeth, how do we go about retargeting on consumables? We invested a lot of budget into that. Should we start retargeting and sponsored display ads set up for products as well, even if many SKUs? This is a fantastic question. I would ask, do you have access to AMC? Because if you have access to AMC, you can use, let me go back. Let's see. I'm assuming you're brand registered. And I'm assuming that you have, you're brand registered and then you're using subscribe and save. Subscribe and save is going to be huge for you. You 110% want to like target, make sure that you have subscribe and save going. If you have any consumable product, by the way, and you do not have subscribe and save turned on, turn on subscribe and save. I know some products aren't eligible for it, but I would absolutely do that. And all right, so that's the first thing. I'm assuming all of these things are. You can look at your new to brand. So new to brand is going to be important for you in this case, because again, what you're doing is with a consumable product, you want to try and get more shoppers who have not been exposed to your product into the funnel. Sponsored display can be good here because you can target audiences. However, what I would want to understand is what kind of shoppers, let me put this way, like what is my audience on my shopper? So I would look at, you can go into brand analytics. There's something in brand analytics where you can look at repeat purchase. That one's the easiest to do. If you are in Seller Central, that's the one that you can go up, you can go and find really quickly. And you can go look at it today and say, okay, how much of my repeat customers do I have? I would probably look into AMC audiences for sponsored product ads. So a big one for you is going to be like consumers who added to your cart but didn't purchase. For us, we found that this is probably one of the most universally best performing audiences. We like to use these audiences. We find they work best in auto campaigns. You could do like lower bid auto campaigns, attach an AMC audience, start with either you could start with 0 placement percentages increase for that audience specifically, Or if you wanted to test it, you could start test with like 10 to 20% increases on that. So that's going to be a good audience for you. There's also other audiences. This is assuming that you have access to AMC. If you don't have access to AMC data, there are tools out there that allow you to get access to AMC. Or what we do is we also have we have an AMC audience because we're part of the advertising partner network. And so we immediately go, no matter what the size of the brand, we're always creating like an AMC. We create an AMC called seat, I think, for all of our sellers. And it also depends on the size of your brand and the current size of your ad spend right now and what you can afford. I would say a low barrier, I would look at audiences in sponsored product ads. Ideally, you have access to AMC so you can run those audiences. Amazon does have some pre-built audiences, so you can look at that. There are reports that you can look at to gather new to brand. Again, if you look at the brand analytics inside of Seller Central, that will give you a good idea about like repeat purchases, people dropping off, subscribe and saves, all of that. And you can kind of look at those numbers over time. And then I would say if you have a decent budget at all, depending on what your total sales are. If you're in the beginning stages, I would start more with the sponsored product ads. But if you're at a level where it makes sense really to go after new customers and get them into subscribe and save, DSP is really fantastic for consumable products. It's amazing. I would highly recommend looking into DSP, but that depends on, again, your current ad budget. I don't think I would even start looking at DSP unless you're already spending at least 10 grand a month. And then you're able to spend more, you're able to allocate more budgets. And the way I would think about DSP is I wouldn't be like, okay, so I need to like pull out some of my sponsored product ad budgets and then allocate that. You don't want to look at it like that. You want to look at it as additive budget. I've never seen it work out well. I mean, if there's waste that you can clear out of the sponsored product ads and then reallocate it, great. But I wouldn't look at it as, DSP budgets. You basically want to have your own budget allocated for that ad type. Awesome. Well, these are some great questions. You guys are awesome today. I freaking love it. So for those of you, it looks like we have a couple more people joining in. The format of this, by the way, whatever Amazon ad questions you have, drop them into the chat. Or if somebody's asked a question and you have a follow-up on your question, if I can expand on something more, just let me know. Feel free to drop the question into the chat. There was a couple other questions of some people. Yeah, the brand has subscribe and save, does about 50K a month. Started looking into AMC audience, how to integrate them, how to exist campaigns or duplicate campaigns. And I would start with identifying the audiences, building them, and then attaching them to auto campaigns is where we've had the most success. Doing that. As of right now, you can only attach a single audience to any sort of sponsored product campaigns. You can, and you don't have the ability to detarget shoppers who are not part of that specific audience. You can with sponsored display ads, so it might be worth looking into sponsored display ads if you identify an audience that works really, really well. In sponsored display ads, you can target a specific audience, and in sponsored display ads, you would be only targeting that audience, which also can be helpful. But if you're really going to get into like intense retargeting, or you want to look at, kind of really growing the brand and getting more into the funnel, I would say DSP is a fantastic next step. Then when you don't have to go through a service provider for it, is a completely different game than sponsored product ads. Like we had one brand asking about DSP and they need like kind of a quick win to push up. And they're like, oh, what about DSP? Because they're trying to go. I'm like, no. DSP is like, or we had some brands who were like, oh, we have like a huge selling event come up. And, the brand manager was like, hey, let's spin up some DSP. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. We don't just like immediately spin up campaigns. There's a whole like learning thing. There's much more of a learning algorithm on the DSP side. It's a bit more similar to kind of think like meta ads. There's more creatives involved with it. There's more creative insights when it comes to audiences. Like you're basically all targeting audiences there. So you can target audiences and then eliminate all. So for example, is you could target, say, like an audience that would be like similar to like a certain segment that works really well, and then like eliminate anyone who has purchased from you in X amount of months. Or a fantastic one would be like, let's say if we're talking like sort of like retargeting ads, you could build an audience of shoppers who have purchased from you but then are not subscribe and save customers. Like that would be a great audience. So hey, let's re-engage those ones. And obviously you have to have a certain number of shoppers that are in that audience for you to even be able to build them. I'm trying to remember what that number is. I'd have to go get with my DSP team on that. So providing you have enough shoppers in your funnel, which sometimes you can go back out, so you could be like, okay, anyone who has purchased from me in the last like 6 months and then or in the last year and then is not a subscribe and save customer, let me go back and retarget them. So there's a lot of really interesting. It gets more into like buyer psychology and psychology of shoppers. But it can be a really effective. Now, not every brand makes sense for DSP, but in our experience, like definitely consumable brands can be really fantastic when it comes to DSP. And with that, if anyone else has a question, looks like we got a couple more minutes. I have gotten some questions from some brands this past week, so let me pull those up. One question that I got asked a lot this week was, what's more important for scaling, click-through rate or conversion rate? This is sort of a tricky one. I would say when it comes, okay, I'm gonna say this because I know a lot of people in my space. I love them. They're amazing. They're like, hey, look, the fastest way to scale any brand is going to be through click-through rate, because if you think about it, the amount of impressions that you get, you will just capture, like let's say you double your click-through rate, you double the traffic to your product, and ergo you double sales, right? And I would say that's true. Increasing conversion rate is actually much harder than increasing click-through rates. Click-through rates, a lot of times you can just do, like intense, a lot of work on your main image, but then that may or may not increase click-through rate, conversion rate. I would say the most important things for increasing conversion rate are definitely your image stack. So it's not just the first image, definitely images 1, 2, 3, probably 4 are kind of the huge ones to focus on. But what I will say is that click-through rate is the fastest way to increase traffic, but conversion rate is the best way to scale profitably. And I will die on that hill, because if you think about it, if you increase your click-through rate, like let's say you increase your click-through rate, but your conversion rate isn't great. And let's say because your conversion rate isn't great, you have 10% is not a bad conversion rate. Let's say it's like a 5% conversion rate. So at a 5% conversion rate, it takes you 20 clicks to generate a sale. If you're paying $1, that's $20 to generate one sale through advertising. And then let's say your product is $25. I'm only making $5 again after ads, and I'm probably losing money because I have all my inventory fees and my selling fees and everything else. So let's see what the math looks like. I'm gonna actually have to do math. I can't do it in my head, but you would have say $20 divided by $25. That's an 80% ACoS, which may or may not be scalable if you think about it. So in that case, I would say, okay, can I double my click-through rate? Maybe a little bit easier because I can just focus on my main image. And then can I just exponent, double my traffic? Yeah, but you're doubling your traffic at an 80% ACoS. So is that important for scaling? Well, maybe scaling, if you only look at scaling through the lens of volume, yes. But I don't know about you. I don't look at scaling only, am I increasing volume? I look at, am I increasing volume and can I have profits at the end of the day. Like I want both. There is a world where we can have both. I want both. And so in this question of click-through rate versus conversion rate, is the one maybe a little bit easier to pull on? Yes. Is it going to be the biggest lever? I would argue no. I would say conversion rate, because at the same token, let's say, and again, easier said than done, takes intense effort, but let's say it takes me, I get a 10% conversion rate, which means it takes me 10 clicks on average. All of a sudden, I have 10 divided by 25%, which is a 40. So I cut my A cost in half. So the one doubles my volume at the exact same profitability level, and the conversion rate can double my volume with the same traffic and lower my advertising costs and increase my return. And because I get a better conversion rate, and the algorithm's also looking at, like, the algorithm does take into account click-through rate, I've seen conversion rate and sales velocity have more impact. Maybe there's someone out there who's going to tell me I'm wrong, but I've seen, again, in this, like, what's more important, click-through rate or conversion rate question, because that's, I mean, it's a reasonable question to ask. Again, there is this focus on click-through rate, but what I found is that click-through rate does not improve profitability at all, ever. Click-through rate only will improve the volumes that I can get for the traffic. But if my cost on that traffic, it's not gonna help my cost on my traffic ever. Click-through rate will never make you more profitable. It will simply increase your volume. And if you have a pipeline of volume that is already making you lose money, and you, like, let's say you're in the negative and you double your sales, you just doubled how much money you're losing. Like, I don't want that. So I would say if there was one key metric to focus in on, and I'm saying this from like a seller perspective on improving, I would say if there was two things that I had to give sellers, they'd be like, look, if you hyper focused on these two things, there's lots of things that you could do. If you hyper focus on inventory management and conversion rate optimization, your business, night and day different. What I see too many times is that there's unfortunately a lot of sellers like, oh yeah, we optimized our listing, we did conversion rate optimization like a year ago. Like, that is a constant ongoing thing. And so that would be something I would definitely want to focus in on. And we have time for one last question. Again, I'm going to pull questions that I've gotten sort of this week, but feel free. We do have time if somebody wants to squeak in another question. But the other one is how often, this is a question a lot, like, how do I catch issues on an account? Because I can't tell you how many times the seller, like, hasn't really, like, dug in, or be like, hey, how much are you spending? Oh, I think it's about this. Or what is your profitability? It's roughly this. In terms of advertising to catch issues, I'm not going to say like the whole account, but if you're looking from an advertising perspective, we actually check accounts daily. There is that. But we have found that there's 4 numbers that if you religiously pay attention to these 4 numbers and constantly scan every single account to catch trends that are happening on these 4 numbers, you will pretty much always catch any issue in an account from an advertising perspective. I'm talking about like inventory issues and all that stuff, right? I'm just talking about, like, if we want to manage advertising well, there are 4 things that we religiously pay attention to. Now, these 4 things will not tell you the root cause. They won't tell you how to fix them specifically. That's a whole nother analysis talk. But they will tell you if something is out of whack. And those 4 things are total sales, ad spend, total A costs, and ad conversion rate. If you looked at those 4 things daily and you watched for a negative trend in any of these 4 metrics, negative trends being sales going down, spend increases, which again, sometimes spend increase. Like if I have a spend increase and then total sales go up and total A cost goes up, hey, everything else is fantastic, right? So these all things work in tandem. If I have an increase in total cost, not great. And if I have a decrease in my ad conversion rate, because I cannot tell you how many freaking times I've looked at an account, I'm like, oh, look, you guys scaled spend, you increased spend, and your ad conversion rate went down, which tells me that you are spending on things that do not convert well. So again, got to go find the root cause. What have we started spending on? Where is that spend going? Where is it underperforming? But again, if you check those 4 things in an account and you check them religiously, you will pretty much always catch issues. And what do we mean by a trend? That is a 3-day increase, decrease, depending on the KPI across the account. And so those are the things we check off. And we actually have like push notifications for ourselves to help track those things. All right. How many days, months of stock should we have, aim to have in Amazon? So this is also a cash flow issue. So I'm not going to speak to that fact at all. But I will say what we have found is that you want to have, we used to say about 30, and then we got someone on our team who has like seller experience, and in his experience he was saying between 40 to 50 days. So we kind of say the sweet spot is like 45 days of inventory. So what is days of inventory? All you got to do to calculate that is you look at your FBA stock, then you look at the sales velocity, your daily sales velocity for that product. So like, let's say you look at month to date, or you look at like last 7 days. Some people do last 30 days. It depends on how volatile up and down your sales are. You would want to say total units sold divided by how many days you pulled that data for. That gives you your average daily sales velocity. So on average, I sell 10 a day. On average, I sell 20 a day, whatever the case may be, 100 a day. Some products sell that much. And then I would want to take that number and multiply, or take my FBA stock and divide it by my average unit velocity. And then that tells me how many days of coverage you will have. So if I do not replenish my inventory, how many days of coverage do I have before I run out of stock? In our experience, about 45 days is the sweet spot. What would be wrong with having 3 months of inventory, for example? Yes, so 3 months. 3 months are not bad. Like if you can afford to keep more inventory in than the 45 days of inventory, there's nothing wrong with that. Some of our clients can afford to do that. It depends on, like, say things like your storage fees, or let's say you keep in that much inventory and then you're going to have you're going to run into issues. So if you can afford to do more than that, like some clients that have like really large items, like they're paying more in inventory costs. But then there's other clients that you have, they're like, look, my product is so small, I could keep like freaking 100 days of inventory and I'm paying peanuts. Like I'm fine. And we move enough stock that never becomes an overstock issue. If that is you, fan freaking tastic, keep at it. I'm just saying, like, what we have seen is that if a product gets under 45 days of inventory, and then specifically if it starts to get under 30 days of inventory coverage, what we have found is that it affects conversion rates. All of a sudden sales start going down. And I've heard this comment from clients more than once of like, hey, look, we have inventory. Like, what's going on? Why are we not selling? And the answer is because when you get limited on your inventory, there are certain areas of the country, because what Amazon does is they will distribute your products across the country. So you might have like a couple pieces of inventory here, a couple of pieces of inventory in this warehouse. And what they're doing is they're distributing the inventory so you can get better ship times across the country. And the United States of America is pretty big. East Coast to West Coast takes a while to ship, right? So they're distributing the inventory and they have a really good warehouse structure. As your days of coverage starts to deplete, you actually lose a lot of that coverage in certain parts of the country. And so what you will see is that there actually is an impact. What we've seen, and last couple times I've done an analysis on this, your sessions or your traffic tend to remain relatively constant. It's your conversion rates that actually take a hit. And our assessment of that has been, it seems that the ship times increase in certain segments of the country when your inventory gets depleted. Definitely under 30 to 35 days, but 45 days even as well. So that's why it's pretty important to keep inventory, because that you run out of inventory. It's not like a D2C site where, sometimes you can do like limited stock drops, or like if your audience really, really likes a specific product, you need to say, okay, we're out of inventory. Maybe we missed out on some sales, but I can like blast it out to my email list or tell them that like, hey, we're back in stock. And, we're kind of in some ways sort of hopefully like up and running again once we get the inventory back in. That's not the same on the Amazon platform, because when the inventory depletes, you lose ranking. You're not maintaining sales velocity. So Amazon's not keeping you up in, like, they're not interested in having their shoppers find listings that are no longer available for purchase. Like they want someone to be able to come and purchase something immediately. So you lose ranking, you lose velocity, and depending on how far, like how long you're out, a lot of times you end up having to claw back that market share that you lost when you went out of stock. So that really, especially on Amazon, can be quite detrimental to especially the long-term growth of a brand, depending on the inventory levels. So with that, we are at time. We are slightly above time. And so for that, I do see other questions popping in the chat. Apologies. We are at time. So if this has been valuable, which I really hope it has, I hope to see you back same time, same place next week. We do this every single Thursday, basically rain or shine. So I look forward to catching you all next week and answering more of your Amazon ad questions. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.